When you think about World War II, what do you picture? You probably think about bigger guns, thicker armor, right? But what if I told you that the thing that really terrified the German high command wasn't a better weapon, it was a better engine? It sounds kind of crazy, but one single captured American tank would end up revealing a secret about industrial power that shook the Third Reich's confidence right to its very core. So, let's dive in. We're going to follow the incredible journey of this one Sherman tank, all the way from the deserts of North Africa to the most secret testing grounds in Germany. And we're going to see, through the eyes of Germany's own engineers, how this one machine forced them to confront a really humiliating truth about their own limits. And it completely changed how they thought about warfare forever. All right, so our story kicks off in Tunisia, middle of February 1943. It's hot. It's dusty. German forces from the 51st Heavy Panzer Battalion, they capture something they've only ever seen in grainy intelligence photos, a fully intact, totally operational American M4A1 Sherman tank. It's even got a name painted on the side, War Daddy 2. Now this isn't just a trophy. It's a piece of enemy tech that they absolutely have to understand. Okay, so before this tank is even sent off for any kind of formal testing, it delivers its first major shock. German troops are ordered to drive it 350 kilometers across that brutal North African terrain to get it to a port. And for 4.5 days, they just drive. And guess what? Nothing goes wrong. The engine doesn't overheat, the transmission holds up. Now, for German crews who were used to their own sophisticated panzers constantly breaking down, it was deeply unsettling. This enemy machine just worked. So War Daddy 2 gets loaded onto a ship and sent right to the heart of the German war machine, the Kummersdorf Proving Ground, just south of Berlin. Think of this place like Germany's Area 51 for military hardware. It's where their best and brightest engineers tear everything apart. And now, the Sherman is under their microscope, and it's about to reveal secrets that go way beyond how thick its armor is. The first big uh-oh moment for the German engineers came when they cracked open the transmission. Inside, they found something they considered way too difficult and expensive to mass produce: hair-bone gears. See, German tanks used straight-cut gears, which needed insane levels of precision and constant maintenance. But these American hair-bone gears, they were stronger, they were way more durable. And the Americans weren't just making a few, they were churning them out by the thousands. And right there, that just perfectly shows the huge difference in thinking. The Sherman's transmission had synchronized gears. It was almost as easy to drive as a civilian car. You didn't need the complex double clutching that German tankers had to master just to avoid blowing up their own transmissions. The German tank, it was built for a highly trained expert. But the American Sherman, it was built for the average GI, the everyman, who probably already knew how to drive his dad's Ford. So this growing feeling of unease inside the testing facility, it's about to spill out into a very public, very critical moment in June of '43. A high-stakes demonstration is set up at an artillery range, and sitting in the audience is one of the most powerful men in the Reich, the armaments minister, Albert Speer. He's there to see Germany's latest and greatest tanks go head-to-head with this captured American machine. What happens next is just a public humiliation. War Daddy 2, the American Sherman, rolls up to this steep test slope and just climbs it. Smoothly, no hesitation. Then comes the brand new Panther, Germany's big answer to the Soviet T-34. It makes it, but you can see it struggling. And then the Ferdinand, this massive high-tech tank destroyer, just stalls completely, partway up the hill. Right there, in front of the entire armaments leadership, the supposedly inferior American tank performed flawlessly, while Germany's newest pride and joy just faltered. The incident was so bad that they actually had to acknowledge it in public. The propaganda newspaper, Das Reich, ran a story calling the Sherman a quite praiseworthy product, and they mention its connection to the almost arrogant requirements of the American auto industry. Now, that carefully worded praise was meant to project confidence, but behind the scenes, a quiet panic was starting to set in. The Americans weren't just building okay tanks, they were engineering them to last. So, back at Kummersdorf, the public show is over, but the really systematic testing is just getting started. As the engineers pushed War Daddy 2 and other captured Shermans to their absolute limits, the data they collected started to paint a picture that was just impossible to ignore. A massive, massive reliability gap was opening up. Through these long, grueling trials, the engineers documented an incredible figure. A Sherman tank could go for over 2,000 kilometers before it needed any kind of major maintenance. I mean, think about that distance for a second. That's the ability to fight, move, and redeploy over and over and over again without getting pulled off the line for a huge overhaul. Now, contrast that with Germany's new hope, the Panther. In its early models, its operational range was just a tiny fraction of the Sherman's. I mean, under some battlefield conditions, Panthers were being abandoned after less than 100 kilometers because their final drives would fail. The data was showing a nearly 4-to-1 disadvantage in what really matters most, the ability to actually stay in the fight. And this chart right here, this just visualizes the catastrophic consequences. At the massive tank battle of Kursk in July 1943, only 16% of Panthers were operationally ready on any given day. More of them were knocked out by their own mechanical failures than by the enemy. A superior gun doesn't mean a thing if the tank is sitting in a repair depot miles behind the front lines. So you have to ask, why? How could this possibly happen? Well, the answer wasn't just about better steel or bigger guns. It went way deeper, to the very culture of their industries, a culture that was born decades before the war even started. German engineering, it was all about the pursuit of theoretical perfection. They wanted the best gun, the thickest armor, the most impressive stats you could put on paper. And this led to brilliant but incredibly complex, over-engineered machines like the Panther and the Tiger. But American industry, it was built on the back of its massive civilian car industry. They prioritized practical function, reliability, and making things easy to mass produce. They built tanks that could be fixed by mechanics with basic automotive training because, well, that's the workforce they had. And this number? This is the ultimate result of that entire philosophy. American factories pumped out nearly 50,000 Sherman tanks. That's more than every single tank of every single type that Germany produced during the entire war. The American approach wasn't just about building a good tank. It was about building enough good tanks that always worked. It was a victory of logistics and reliability. The lessons Germany learned from War Daddy II and the thousands of Shermans that followed were, well, they were painful, and they came way too late to change the outcome of the war. But they were not forgotten. In fact, these lessons would directly influence German engineering for decades to come. So let's fast forward a bit and look at the Leopard 1. This was West Germany's first main battle tank developed after the war, and when its designers sat down in the 1950s, they weren't just thinking about armor and firepower. Oh no, they were thinking about the failures of the Panther. They were thinking about the hard lessons learned at Kummersdorf. They were thinking about the Sherman. And this right here just perfectly illustrates that legacy. The core principles of the Leopard 1, they read like a checklist of the Sherman's greatest strengths. Number 1, reliability above all else. Number 2, design for easy maintenance with simple tools. And number 3, standardized components for fast field repairs. The very things that made this Sherman so effective became the foundation for one of the most successful tank designs of the entire Cold War. And this is why it all mattered so much. This quote from a high-ranking German general in 1945 just lays it all bare. The cost of unreliability, it wasn't just about losing machines, it was about losing morale. When your soldiers can't trust their own equipment to get them to the fight, or more importantly, get them home, they lose faith in the whole mission. Tanks were being abandoned not because they were destroyed, but because crews were terrified they would just break down and leave them stranded. So that leaves us with a question that really echoes through military design even today. What truly makes a weapon the best? Is it the one that looks invincible on paper, the one with the biggest numbers? Or is it the one like War Daddy II, maybe not the strongest or the toughest, but the one that you can always count on to be there when you need it most? The simple, powerful lesson of the Sherman is that reliability, well, it's its own and maybe the ultimate form of superiority.